ahead TV.
Yeah, that's fair. I suppose it's is there much in the way of like English language TV over there, or is it all just
It's all
by
German.
default in German? Yeah.
Yeah, it's all German. And even because Germany is big in dubbing, when we have some like blockbuster movies or like cinematic movies, real movies from wherever, all over the world, they will be in German too. They won't even be in original language. Sometimes we specifically on some special days to special times, they would screen original, but only on some channels, but everything is German dubbed.
It wasn't that was the thing with Arnold in Terminator. I think the dub of Terminator, where they had to get a German dub in because of his German accent was too
His German
kind
is
of
even
rural.
worse.
Yeah,
Amazing. Yeah,
it sounded like a farmer or something. Yeah.
I used to work with a German head teacher, and apparently I never heard her speak any German. And apparently the German teacher at the school possibly might have heard her speak German.
Right.
But kind of the German teacher could get away with just about anything. And the kind of the kind of decision amongst other people was that the German teacher had actually identified that this head teacher, who kind of presented with quite a posh English accent for somebody who was not British, possibly came from not a very nice, or came with a bit of a rough German accent. I'm not sure the best way to describe it. Kind of sort of almost like you get regional accents in the UK that are kind of maybe looked down upon to a certain extent.
Right.
And we kind of got the impression that maybe the German teacher was getting away with things like that, getting away with things because they knew this, and almost was holding it over the head teacher as kind of a, let me get away with stuff, or I'll tell people that you're actually from a really common part of Germany and not at all posh like you pretend you are.
I mean, within Germany, we make fun of all different kinds of dialects. Obviously, there's a north-south and a east-west, rivalry where you're like, oh, you sound ridiculous. No, you sound more ridiculous. But I don't know. There are some dialects where people agree upon, like nationwide, that they are more funny or sound more, I don't know, rude or weird than others. But yeah.
There's a hell of a lot of parallels between the UK and Germany in that respect.
Right. And we have tons of different dialects. There must be hundreds. Like you can go from one village to the other and it's going to be different. You've probably got the same issue.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Kind of the density of population that just didn't travel outside of their own little bubble.
Right.
I saw something on, might have been Instagram a few weeks ago, and it was somebody. It was one of these kind of reels where there was some Americans sort of saying how they traveled like 4 hours to go out for dinner, and they were sort of saying about, hey, that's like, oh, I've got a friend in Bournemouth, and I found out that Bournemouth is like 4 hours from London, and going, and it was like, and somebody, a British person, kind of went and said, it might be 4 hours, but that could be a million miles in terms of kind of what's happening. You're not going to be able to travel from Bournemouth to London in 4 hours because of the traffic, for starters. Getting anywhere on the M25 is going to automatically add 3 hours to your journey. Then there's the whole thing about kind of actually the different, every county, and even that you say different villages. It's like the one village won't talk to the people in the village 3 miles down the road. Heaven forbid. That's kind of like they're completely different species. The accents are completely different. And that's just the kind of way Britain's sort of grown up.
Yeah, I mean, like where I grew up in the kind of the northwest of, northwest, but Liverpool and Manchester are the two kind of sort of rival cities up in that way. And again, lots of kind of stuff went on around World War II in terms of there was a site kind of in between the two of them that was kind a jumping off point, if you like, for like American planes coming over. So there's a lot of influx of Liverpool and Manchester coming into that area, but they still had that same rivalry. And the rivalry's gone on for hundreds and hundreds of years. But you always kind of grow up with this known rivalry between the two. And then I moved, when I was in my teens, I moved into that kind of that town in between the two. And it's a mix of people that were displaced during World War II into there. So it's a kind of a melting pot of both the big cities. And even still, even though these people have, second or third generation on growing up in that town, that's a mix of all of them, there's still that kind of ingrained rivalry, despite the fact that you're constantly mixing with them. It's utterly pointless, but it's just kind of, it's the way it's been. It's the way it shall always be.
Right. Mm.
And they're like 20 miles apart. It's ridiculous.
Right. I mean, one generation back, two definitely, but even one generation back, people just stuck within their village in a certain, like, they wouldn't move away. And then just like since, I don't know, when this whole let's study abroad, let's go somewhere started, and people, like young people, actually started to go somewhere else. But my family already is a melting pot of dialects and weird mixtures of like all over the places. But now I'm so far away from my village, and everyone else is still down there in the south. So people stick usually with their small towns, and it's really cute. And I also admire if people want to preserve certain dialects. There are even people who write books within that dialect to kind of keep those stories and those specific things, because they can die out quite fast, right? And it's not just the way people pronounce stuff, it's also completely different words for things, right? So it is quite fascinating. And then even in some dialects, some words, yes, right. Some dialect words, specific words, even have then some weird connections to completely different languages. And you're like, oh, that's where you got that from. So you have German, and then in the dialect, suddenly you find like, I don't know, a French word, a Polish word, an Italian word, and all these things where like, makes sense.
That one traveller who brought that in with one shipment of something 150 years ago, and it's stuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in South Wales, which is a lot of. I mean, South Wales is obviously quite big, but the Southeast Wales, there's a lot of valleys, and the valleys are quite separate, so you get different accents, slight variations. There's somebody outside of the valleys, they would just think it was a valleys accent, but if you grew up in the valleys and sort of you'd recognise the sort of differences. But there was definitely a difference also, not just in kind of the accents, but in the way people talked. And we, for example, there's a lot of Italians moved to sort of South Wales, sort of pre-World War II and post-World War II. So that had quite an influence as well. So look, quite a lot of ice cream parlours. But then there was, because the history of Wales and the way the Welsh language was almost eradicated, but little bits of it kept. And certainly for somebody of my age, because it was a few years after I kind of, when I became an adult, schools started teaching Welsh again at primary school. So a lot of people born in the kind of late 1980s and through effectively become bilingual, particularly if they kind of keep it up. A lot of people don't, but if they keep it up, there's a great potential to become bilingual. But even when I was young, and obviously before I was, we had something what we called Wenglish, which is where Welsh words started to come into English, and so you get phrases that would you'd be speaking English, but then you'd throw in a Welsh word. So a common one, particularly as a child, you might get somebody kind of, a parent might come and have a cwtch, CWTCH, and a cwtch.
What?
A cwtch, CWTCH. Basically, it's Welsh for a cuddle.
Cute.
So a cwtch is kind of, So it's kind of, and there are other words like that as well, where you kind of, other words get sort of thrown in, and sometimes the words would be amalgamated, so you'd get partly an English word and partly a Welsh word together. I can't think of an example of that off the top of my head, but you'd sometimes get that merging of a phrase as well. So there was this whole kind of extra language almost, and you get similar. I mean, you get similar in England as well, particularly like if you go far northeast, for example. Yeah, it can be really difficult to understand, not just in terms of the accent, but also the phrases that people use, and that can vary.
That kind of Scots influence down into
the full-on
Northified
Geordies.
English.
Yeah.
By the way, with the Kutsch, it's quite cute because cuddle in German is Kuscheln. So Kutsch and Kuscheln is not too far. So there you have another connection.
Yeah.
So Welsh, maybe it could be interesting.
Welsh is an old language. So
Right.
it may well have borrowed from some of the sort of the older Germanic languages, which often then led to sort of modern
Essentially,
German.
it's really old Celtic, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, Welsh is one of the oldest European languages. Yeah, interesting stuff, language, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I enjoy it. It's been my main thing my whole life. Studied languages, continue to learn languages. I love it. And the more you look into it, the more you discover like some weird connections that are so funny. Connections between, things that you would never have thought have something to do with each other. So it's great.
Yeah, I think there's obviously certain obvious connections with stuff like trade routes or traded commodities that have similarities in words and things. But yeah, I think there's some really interesting. I chat to a guy at work the other day who's recently started with us, and he's Hungarian, but now lives in South Wales.
Hungarian is wild.
Exactly, because there's
crazy.
Hungarian, Estonian, and Finnish all have similarities between the three, even though they're geographically.
They're one language group, yeah.
Yeah, weird. But there's a jump away from Hungary, and that's very bizarre.
So Finnish is supposed to be very hard, isn't it? Very hard language to learn.
It looks so cute. It looks too cute.
All the little dots. Yeah.
Too many of those umlauts. You think German is crazy? They are more crazy. They use all of them.
For a while, I was thought there's an Instagram channel, which I can't quite remember the name of, but it's a British guy who's been living in Finland for 20 years or so, and he sort of talks about kind of the Finnish language and some of the idiosyncrasies of the Finnish language. And sometimes he'll be like, I can remember once he put up some like 5 words, and they looked identical, but each one had just a very slight variation in how it was pronounced, and they meant 5 completely different things. And just you would not want to get some of them. I can't remember again. Memory's poor. I can't remember what they were, but some of them you would not want to get them mixed up.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be quite embarrassing to get them mixed up.
Yeah, an old friend of mine from college. Yeah. Sorry, go on, Pierre.
Please, Jamie, go on.
I was going to say, an old friend of mine from college, him and his wife were both learning Cantonese because she worked in a Chinese restaurant, and he would do deliveries. So just she was learning it sort of passively by working in the kitchens and stuff with the Chinese chefs, and he was learning it just for the same kind of through osmosis with his wife, but then because he was doing deliveries as well as kind of just trying to ingratiate himself with it. And he's saying that there's a couple of times where you get the phrasing ever so slightly wrong, and it drastically changes to something that might sound to us, to our kind of bland ears, kind of sounded no different, or you could lose it in an accent kind of thing. But
rather than "thank you for the delivery, please may I eat your pet horse,"
Yeah, something like
Yeah.
that.
But
mean,
so there were a few that were just close enough that if you picked that particular phrase and got it wrong, you'd be punched in the chops.
right.
Straight into some bad slang and things like that.
I mean, the good thing is, or could be like, if you look obviously foreign and they know that you're trying and that it's not your native language, they might be kind enough to get the context, and
Yes.
then they will know what you meant and they won't take it in a bad way, but still, yeah. I just wanted to add to what Andy also said with these slight differences. We have this in German as well, even you wouldn't think. Um, just the way you pronounce a word, the same thing, where you would say like, oh yeah, Chinese is wild, German would never be. We have some words, if you put the stress on a different syllable, it means also something completely different. So if you just read it, could be the same, but if you hear it, there's actually a difference. So even German is doing weird things where you would think, you just read it how it's written, easy. Sometimes it's tricky.
Totally attest to that with doing it on Duolingo and getting the I and the E the wrong way around.
Right. One is just a long E and the other is something completely different. And then, yeah. Also, there are many words that just have this switched up as the difference in those words. So for an I, it's like, what is it? But what languages do you have on Duolingo?
I
You learn
just the German.
Just German. Okay, I thought you do some other crazy things. Maybe, who knows?
No, I when I first signed up for Duolingo years ago, I did look at Esperanto.
Right.
Just for no other reason than because it's Esperanto. I don't know anyone else who knows any of it other than
anyone actually use. I said to when you actually use it.
Right.
In fact, no, tell a lie. There was a guy who, again, I was at college with, so 20 odd years ago, that his school was some super religious school. I think it was nuns, and he was Esperanto as his first language.
Wow,
interesting.
Quite crazy, yeah. But
Jamie, did you have any like French or Spanish at school, like any of those Roman languages?
Yes, okay. I did French, Latin, and ancient Greek.
Okay, so then Esperanto must have been like easily understandable, right? Or did you?
Yeah.
How was this? Because I haven't touched it much.
I've all kind of struggled with languages, but I think part of it is self-imposed by telling myself that I struggle with languages. So it's
confident.
It's from having so many German friends that I've sort of thought, maybe I can give this a go, because at least then I can, I've got people I can speak to, or I can not feel as stupid speaking with.
I mean, at least on paper, it looks similar enough sometimes. There are a lot of words that are basically just the same. So that helps if you already know English. German is easier than for others, but still, there's crazy things. No, other things as well, like, I don't know, bank and book and Buch is not too far, or whatever else we have.
Yeah.
We have so many internationalisms now. Like in Germany, nobody speaks a single sentence without using at least one English word. So we're getting there.
Yeah. On behalf of England, I can only apologise.
Nah, it's fine. We had these discussions always, like, is it something bad happening to the language, or is it just something that how a language works and evolves? And there have always been two sides. Like, are these influences bad, or do we just accept it as something that we as humans just naturally do? And I think it's fine. I don't struggle with it.
Yeah,
even these grammatical errors where people say, oh, you don't say it in that way. Even there you could argue, like, this is just how it evolves to make it easier to communicate, and then it's fine. I don't know.
I used to be really the other way. Because like through school, it was very much, here's how the language got from Latin or ancient Greek to now. Here is how words are supposed to be. Here is how the language is supposed to You know, it's very prescriptive kind of, this is English, this is what it's supposed to be, thou shalt do things correctly. And then finding out, you know, kind of a couple of years ago that actually, you know, the dictionary is descriptive, not prescriptive.
Yeah.
And then listening to, there's a podcast called The Illusionist that she's a Helen Zaltzman, the woman who runs it, is a phenomenally talented linguist, or language historian, I suppose, in some ways. And they had the particular episode about that kind of that change in the language, and it completely just turned my world upside down with that.
Yeah.
But I think that we've kind of all got a bit of a fear of something getting away from us, you know, a language evolving and then us not being able to keep up, sort of like that kind of fear of missing out, or fear of looking stupid, or, you know, I think you've only got to spend 10 minutes around a teenager to know that it's not worth trying to keep up with it.
And also these things are actually, you know, it's necessary to set yourself, like set a boundary between you and the other generations. You know, sometimes you need this for your identity and to feel connected to some groups more than to others, right? But with the dictionary, that's quite interesting. Like it's just a snapshot of how, while the dictionary was made, the language looked like. And the moment you publish it, the moment you put it on the shelf, it's already outdated. Like
absolutely, yeah. And it is just it's a description of how the rest of the population uses the language.
Right. And we have so many text documents now, like, okay, thousands of years back when people didn't write down everything, they were like telling others all the stories. That's sad, because that obviously gets lost the second people go somewhere else, and then that old language is gone forever. But nowadays we have so much documentation of every little thing we're doing that these language changes will forever be like set in stone, and we can look back and find exactly how people were talking. I don't fear that things are lost anymore. Like right now, we have enough written proof of how everything has been. And yeah,
it's the information age, isn't it?
right.
There's talking of that sort of the separation between the generations. There's a comedian in the UK who he was talking about that kind of generational jump in terms of things like text speak, and saying how his generation and the kind of that kind of similar age bracket were of that age of typing a text message out in full English, or, you know, in the full language. But the young generation are using text speak, so it's all the you know, shortened phrases and numbers and representing words and all that kind of thing. But then he noticed that his parents, the generation above, started doing the same thing. And it was because we'd also kind of had that same bracket of having technology and growing up with, you know, this kind of modern technology. So like his parents' generation got their first mobile phones to keep in touch with the grandkids. So then the grandkids who are doing the text speak are the ones who taught the grandparents how to use the phones. Right. So it's sort of in this bubble in the middle where the generations either side of him are using text speak, and he's the only one kind of still speaking in proper sentences and paragraphs and proper grammar, you know.
Right. But I can feel this difference, even though my mom and my grandma, they both use WhatsApp, they're texting, they're using their smartphones, all right, and they are connected to, like, even my grandma watches YouTube videos to learn dance steps or to learn whatever, a song on the recorder, or I don't know. Still, like, when I talk to them, because usually the whole day I talk to people who are more or less my age, and then when I'm on the phone with my mom or my grandma, I suddenly realize that I have to think before I talk. Like, I have to consciously think before I form a sentence, because I know if I talk with them like I talk with my peers, they would not understand half of, like, all these slang from those memes, you know, things that are like common, like generational memory, or like things that we all, like, all these insider jokes. I cannot talk like this with my parents. They would be like, what is she saying? So I have to consciously stop myself. Wait, can you say this in proper German and without using weird insiders from like the internet, because they're not that deep into this.
I love that phrase of generational memories, because that is so on the nose for what it is. It's that kind of shared experience, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how many languages do you speak, Pia?
I mean, if we talk only like properly speak in a way that I can actually function 100% in those languages, then it would be 4. But if we're talking like small talk and other little things, or at least like knowing about the language and having used it in some context, then it would be 8, I think. Yeah.
Ooh.
But I'm still working on it. This is not the end. Let's see.
So what's the 4? German, English,
Polish and
Polish?
Czech.
Okay.
Nice.
Because I
And the other
studied
4?
those and I've lived there and I've studied them for long enough so that I can actually use it in real life. But then I've also learned to read and write Russian, so I know the Cyrillic alphabet, and I can use it at least to some extent. But it's different enough from Polish and Czech that it does not help. And then Norwegian, and then I learned Slovakian, which is so close to Czech that in practical use it's almost not distinguishable, so I wouldn't count it. And at school I had French and Latin, which I can still understand, like when it's written somewhere, but talking with a French person, you should know, this is a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I've also started learning the Hindi alphabet a few weeks back because I work for an Indian company and half of my colleagues speak Hindi. And then I just, because it's on Duolingo, not all languages are there, but at least Hindi is there. So I understand the alphabet as well. It was like a kid making up your own like secret language when you're writing letters with friends. You're like actually looking up, oh, how is like, oh, if you don't even have the same alphabet, it's a real challenge. You first have to actually learn to read, like a 5-year-old in preschool. You're learning to read. It's such a challenge, but yeah.
I did the same with the Greek alphabet.
Right.
So I just to keep myself awake in meetings, I used to take my notes in the Greek alphabet, because it had 2 things: of one, making me stay focused and awake enough to transliterate, and the second function of no one else could read your notes.
Right. So you wouldn't write it in Greek, you just would write English words but using the Greek letters.
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, half of the letters maybe someone could distinguish, but there are some
Is it enough that makes you
weirds,
not able to just read it straight away? Yeah.
But I did this with Russian because I could not write Russian, but I can write the Russian letters. So then I would write with my co-student some secret notes that the other language teacher should not know or the other students shouldn't know. It's fun. You become a 10-year-old again.
Yeah, I must admit, because with saying about like Norwegian, obviously we have our mutual Norwegian friends,
right?
And watching you, and Rasmus, yeah. But watching
friends
you
and Rasmus. Yeah, sorry.
We love him really, but yeah, seeing you reading a Norwegian script and knowing it's not a language that you are fluently speaking, but being able to just read something that's essentially conversational Norwegian, just baffling to it's a very cool thing to see.
I mean, it is, of course, it's close enough to German that even someone who has never seen Norwegian before could distinguish some words, could find out some things. It's not completely alien, but still there are some weird things in there as well. And I by far don't understand everything, but at least it's now at the level where I can like have some basic conversation, small talk at least.
You can
But yeah,
pick
it's
context
funny.
out of it, yeah.
But it's also, I feel like if you grow up with if your native language is like a world language, if your native language is one that everyone speaks, then of course you're like, okay, why like get into this so much, right? And German is a language that everyone worldwide makes fun of. So I fairly quickly started to hide my Germanness, and I enjoyed speaking other languages, and I enjoyed knowing other languages because, first of all, nobody understands German. Like you move around like a few hundred kilometers and nobody knows what you're saying. So you need to speak other languages as fast as possible. And then also it's not a very attractive language to many ears. So yeah, I think if I had grown up speaking English in a country where everyone understands me, then maybe I wouldn't even have bothered to learn like so many other languages. Maybe that's just like the way even Spanish speakers, most of the Spanish speakers speak Spanish, and that's enough. You can survive in this world with Spanish.
Yep.
So
It was interesting.
Spanish is the third most commonly spoken language in the world, I think.
Could be.
Third or fourth.
So it's like Mandarin, English, and then Spanish, probably. Yeah.
Yeah,
Could
Spanish and then I think French.
French or Portuguese, probably not. No, French, definitely. Yeah. And then probably some other like Chinese variation. I don't know if because Mandarin, yeah, is top, but I don't know. Some other Asian language should be also in the top 5 or top 10 at least.
I wonder, population-wise, well, I suppose it's not just Hindi in India, is it? But
yeah.
No, they've got some like 7 national languages, I think.
I just know that even Hindi, like it's more in the north, but even there you have then Punjabi and other like it's such a huge country that even within the same state, people have so many different languages or dialects or variations. And in the south, it's more Tamil, which is one of the oldest languages. It's like on the same ranking as like ancient Egyptian, and like it's one of the oldest languages. It's also spoken in Sri Lanka. What you mentioned, you had a friend from there. Maybe they spoke that too. Could be.
There's definitely an issue in the UK with the idea that well, if I speak English, then I don't need to learn any other languages.
Yeah.
Which is
and then you even speak a kind of English that nobody understands. So
yeah.
How dare you?
Because I studied French and German in my first year of secondary school, first 3 years of secondary school. My second year, I picked up Welsh as well, but that was so I could get out of games because it was an option and it meant I didn't have to do games. But then I kept the German on, but only so after 3 years of two of those also with a third one. But then I kept the German on because I was really into physics, and I had a physics teacher who said, "Oh, you've got to do German." But I had a really, really poor German teacher. There were 2 boys and 20-something girls, and the girls all sat in a horseshoe around the German teacher, and the boys, we were stuck in the corner just giving worksheets, which is absolutely useless. So that was my worst exam, by far, when I was 16. But then I started learning it again when I was kind of in my early 20s, because just as
so it didn't completely traumatize you. You went back to it.
No, I kind of wanted to sort of pick it
voluntarily
again. Yeah, and I've been doing Duolingo now for a while as well, just again trying to pick it up. Because my wife is a linguist. She's a languages teacher. She teaches language. German is her primary. Her degree was German. But she's similar to you. Yeah, multiple languages. She's fluent in. She denies she's fluent in French. The last time we went to France, she was asked to do a survey and asked which part of France she'd come from. So I kind of basically said, you can't say you're not fluent in French. Yeah, if they're asking you, what you think about
where you live,
survey, then yeah. So so French and German are her 2 main languages. Swedish was her third language at university, along with the German and the French. She did Sweden as well, so spent some time in Sweden, which of course then means that she's actually, she can pick up quite a bit of Norwegian and Danish.
Right.
The similarities in having the German background,
Right.
and she can pick up quite a lot of understanding from Dutch and Flemish, and so and in Spanish, because of course the Romance languages. And we went on holiday. The first time we went on holiday to Wales together, and she started picking up. By the time we come back off holiday, she had more Welsh than I did.
I think the more you learn, the easier you learn, and the more connections you have, the easier it gets, right? And even you found, like, when you have, for example, if you know French, Spanish on paper is almost the same. Like, it's obviously the pronunciation is like continents apart, but at least what you write is quite similar, or even the grammar. But yeah, it helps if you already know a language from each family, and then the others from those families are quite. What fascinated me so much was when I had linguistics at university, we were obviously talking about those language trees and how these languages evolved and which branch is coming from where, and how through some, huge movements in the past, the languages were traveling among continents, like not only trade routes later, obviously, but first, like, there were some huge movements of nomads going, like, traveling thousands of kilometers over time, bringing some influences. And I knew that all the European languages are called, like, you have some Indo-European or Indo-German. So okay, there is a connection coming from some, like, Sanskrit roots, or like from traveled from India somehow and mixed with the European tribe languages, which I knew as a theoretical concept, but obviously I had no contact with it whatsoever. And now that I started learning Hindi, suddenly I'm like, it is true. There are Hindi words, and I've made a list. I've written them down. So far, I found 5 words that are the same in Hindi and in Polish. Like, same in the sense of it's almost the same, like almost the same. Not letter for letter, but same enough that this is the history. And then you think, like, what do Poland and India have in common? Nothing.
Yeah.
But suddenly you found some words where you're like, okay, those are not like Slavic roots, and then you find out, oh, it's the same word in Hindi. Wow. So this sometimes languages actually make sense after some time. So I can imagine that your wife, Andy, would be like fluent in Welsh after like a few days, because it's just like suddenly everything makes sense. And then
I mean, although Welsh is, I would suggest, quite different. Although, as you say, there are some similarities, like Kutch and Cuddle.
Right.
But it is quite different. I mean, just the fact it's got 7 vowels instead of 5. It changes, just how it is, and not all the letters. So there's no, in Welsh traditionally, there's no J, there's no letter J, which is odd, because a very common Welsh name is thought to be Jones.
How do they write it then?
Well, originally it would have been with an S, and it's the kind of the influence of the English,
right?
Through the kind of medieval times.
Again, very sorry.
the suppression of the English. But it's interesting if you look at the history of kind of the English language, or the languages in Great Britain, because you've got the influence of the Danes coming across from Scandinavia, and then of course coming up from the Norsemen, the Northmen, the Normans, from the invasion, William the Conqueror. But then you get, if you look at not that I have, but if you look at something like Cornish, there's quite an influence on. If you look at the genetics of people in Cornwall with a long family history of sort of being in Cornwall, there's a massive connection down to kind of Portugal.
Right.
And there's a kind of this connection also in the language there.
Right.
But then you get the other one that I came across recently as well, was if you go around the world and look for places where there is kind of mining infrastructure. So digging in the ground, digging tunnels, digging holes in the ground. You will find in the language from kind of over the last kind of from 400 or 500 years ago, the influence of Cornish and Welsh miners, because they would go to different parts of the world because of their expertise in mining, and that would have an influence then on in the modern languages in those countries. So similar, as you say, the kind of the trade routes from the east, and kind of bringing, and the variations. The other one is the variations in trade routes. So chai and tea effectively are the same thing.
The division across Europe of who uses this and who uses that.
The division is based on which travel route. So chai came over land, but tea came by sea.
Yeah.
It's a fact. It's really, really fascinating.
And then so many times you have like just basic politics, like in all these Slavic countries, you have countries that use Latin alphabet and countries that use Cyrillic alphabet. It's quite like 50-50. And then you think like, why? Especially since the Cyrillic alphabet makes more sense for a Slavic language. It's way more economic. Yeah. You can produce like a long sound with like one letter, while if you use Latin alphabet, you would need 4 letters to produce that sound. So the Cyrillic alphabet is quite like perfectly shaped for those languages. But then you had these 2 churches, right? You had like the Eastern and the Western church. And based on what that ruler in that country was feeling like, who they would want to be influenced by, or what kind of language or power structure they would want for their country, they chose the other language, right? And then some people were like, okay, we want to distance ourselves from the Eastern Church, so we take the Latin alphabet, which now, especially in Polish, people struggle with because they have like 5-6 consonants in one go without a single vowel, and you're like, ugh, why would you go through this if the Cyrillic alphabet has like one sign for this? But it's like purely a political choice. It doesn't make sense, like, other than going with one certain type of religion or one certain type of style, right? So that's also
it's now just making me think of whether we could adapt the English language for the OUGH chunk, because that can be pronounced, that group of letters can be pronounced 7 different ways, depending on the word. So if we had that as a single letter, how we could simplify English, that would.
You mean to distinguish between like through,
7 extra
though,
letters.
and tough, and whatever you got
exactly,
going on there. Yeah. Right. Oh,
a rough
the struggles of English students. Yeah. Wow. We loved those growing up.
Yeah, rough bow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the place in the UK called Loughborough, which has got 2 of them in it, pronounced 2 different ways.
Oh yeah, English city names, like location names, are the worst because you never know how to pronounce it. If it's words like normal English words that you use, then you hear them a few times and you got it and you automatically do it right. But with these location names, you don't hear those in songs, you don't hear those in everyday speech. Yeah. So you look at something like Bicester. I don't know. Oh yeah, and you.
Bicester's a great one. Yeah. I-S-T-E-R rather than B-I-C-E-S-T-E-R.
Yeah. Like Leicester or all of these shires, which could be like words. Yeah. No clue.
I mean, that's a perfect one of if you know the origins. So anything with like Esther or Cester is an old Roman settlement.
Right.
So anything that ends in that is going to have those kind of Roman origins. So it's that chunk in history. And then there's a load of kind of Anglo-Saxon influence for another group of towns and cities. And then there's the Norse influence as well. So that kind of, Danish and Norse influence on another group of cities again. So yeah, there's not quite rules to it, but there is at least sort of a pattern.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, I think like if you live there for a while and if you've heard some of those names, you will figure out those rules, and then you know how to pronounce a word even if you see it for the first time. But until then, we will pronounce it in ways that it will curl your toes in the wrong way. Right. So yeah.
It's the
ask
trap.
me for
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. A friend of mine is South African, and he moved from South Africa to the UK back in the year 2000, and he was a truck driver. And one of his first kind of jobs was it was basically handed a map and told to drive this truck to Leicester. And he did exactly that. He was told, go to Leicester, it's on this motorway, turn off at this point. And he rang his boss up like really early in the morning. He's like, I don't know where the hell this Leicester is. I'm at a place called Leicester, but you told me to go to Leicester. Where the hell is it? I'm at the junction you told me to go to. And sort of had this his boss chuckling down the phone at him, calling him a few very
trust me, it's the same thing. Okay, if you say so.
Pretty much. It's like, you're there, turn left, it's fine.
It's a fascinating thing, isn't it? It really is. But it's.
I love it. I could my two best friends. They also studied languages, but they studied Roman languages. So she's from Brazil. She speaks Portuguese. He's from Germany, and he studied Spanish and Portuguese. And both of them studied then French and Romanian and like all of the Roman languages you could think of. They've touched at some point, and they when they come to visit me or I visit them, we will talk about languages and we go deep. It's like some serious nerd talk, like what did you learn, what connections do we find? And even there we found some weird connections between Portuguese and Polish, even culturally, or like the way they live their religion, the way they prepare their food, or the way they just pronounce certain consonants, like this way that you sometimes feel like Polish is just a bunch of sh. Portuguese is the same. Like if a Spanish person goes to Portugal, like the European Portuguese, I mean, because Brazilian is completely different again, then you feel like some weird connections. And then we would sit there and discuss languages for hours, and this would be our only entertainment for the evening. So there is no end to this.
I've forgotten the name of that one.
For what?
That language that Richard was telling me about from talking mining in Africa. Thinking of the Afrikaans, but the from the diamond mines and emerald mines in kind of Zimbabwe and South Africa, they have a specific language that was made for the mining towns, essentially, because they'd have an influx of people who were working in the mines from all over southern Africa, but then in from wherever they could get them as well. So what they'd do is basically have like a couple of days of training on speaking this particular language that was kind of a lingua franca. It's a little bit of Zulu, a little bit of Afrikaans, a little bit of English, kind of a mix of enough. It's a very instructional language. The idea being that if you're down in a mine somewhere, you don't know who it is that you're going to be turned into and working with. It might be someone from South Africa or somewhere else, that you can at least communicate in a way that gets someone out of danger or does the task that they need to do. And that's a really weird kind of very funky language, and it sounds very weird and disjointed as well. It's
would be interesting to know if they after not working in those mines anymore or having kids and like carrying on, if they would keep this language or those words and carry it on, and then even to generations who have nothing to do with mines anymore but still talk in that mixed way.
Well, it's very weird because it is a very instruction-based one. I know about it from him giving me directions in the car, because he just naturally, that's what he's sort of practiced in doing. So whenever we're going driving somewhere and he's giving me directions, he will speak it in that language at me. And it's even just as an English speaker, you can pick up the context easily enough, with only getting sort of a percentage of the words themselves.
Right.
It's very cool. What the hell it's called?
I think languages are cool. As I said earlier, there is an issue, certainly in the UK, with kind of, everyone speaks English, therefore we don't need to learn any other languages. Although they then get the people who are good linguists, natural linguists, who will pick things up, or people who come from homes where they are exposed to other languages, so they will often kind of develop particular skills. Certainly in the kind of area that I live, we have quite a large population of Nepalis, so there's a lot of Hindi is spoken. So you get, as well as other languages. We school I taught at for a while, until they were made redundant, we had a teaching assistant who spoke 11 different 11 different languages, but that included English. But the majority of her languages were kind of Indo-Asian languages. So Punjabi, Hindi, the whole raft, if you consider sort of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, going into kind of India, and that she had a whole raft. She was such a useful person to have. We often had parents who had, because the Nepalis come through from, because the Gurkhas or some of the Gurkha regiments are based locally. So you often get multiple generational, so less of a problem. But sometimes, if they're over, the dad has come over with parents, and they've got a child, and the child's in the school. Mum might not speak any, and dad may have very limited English skills, most of which are based around kind of the military, because you get like the mining. There's that military kind of application, but conversational English, or English regarding kind of educational ideas that they need for dealing with the school with their children, very, very difficult. So absolutely invaluable. Unfortunately, government cuts got made redundant.
Of course, that's the first cost they're going to cut. That's always like this in those cultural areas.
Something useful so we can communicate with people. Why need that? So then you'd have parents' evenings where you're talking to the child, and you're getting the child to translate for the parents. You're thinking,
right.
Yeah, are you really telling your parents just how naughty you've been?
Sure. Teacher says something, and the kid will be like to the parents, so they're saying I've been very good and I behaved super and my grades are improving. Sure.
I need more snacks.
I mean, it will be weird if the mother or the teacher looked like this and the child is saying something completely different. Then the mom might suspect, have you gone off course here? But
No, he always looks like that. Yeah, he's just really angry.
Sure.
He's an angry kind of person. Yeah. And then 5 minutes later, they're the other side of the parents' evenings, often in like a hall or gymnasium or something. So there's lots of tables out, and they might look back and go, "But he's laughing now." Yeah, why is he laughing at that child?
So what happened back in there?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, he's telling them off. That's he does everything backwards. When he's really angry, he's actually
right. Keep trying.
Funagalo, by the way, is the pidginized Zulu from the mines.
How do you spell
Never
that?
heard of that.
Fanagalo.
Okay.
Yeah. Never heard of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard you talk about it before, but I've never known there was a name for it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a lingua franca type, similar idea behind Esperanto and everything, as well as that kind of manufactured language for a purpose that's relatively straightforward and simple to learn, kind of thing. It's the idea behind it.
I did. Go on.
Sorry, no, finish, because I'm going to change the topic probably. Please go on, Andy.
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting how some people can learn languages, and the environment can change how languages are learned. So probably in the mine, they learn that quite quickly. And saw a video a little while ago talking about how legionnaires in the French Foreign Legion, they're only allowed to speak French. They are not allowed to speak any other language. But of course, they come from all over the world, so they have to get to a working level of French very, very quickly, a matter of weeks. Well, I think it kind of possibly helps the fact that if they don't get it right, they get beaten. But that's what we're used to.
I don't know if this motivation helps for everyone, but yeah.
Incentivized.
The carrot and stick approach. Yeah. You will learn French.
But that's also a sad part of like this. The saddest, like one of the sad parts of all those, whether it's the British colonization or from any other country, like sometimes being like okay, you speak our language now and you forget your native language, and that's it. And if we hear you speak it, that's a problem. And
I mean, the Welsh.
And then
Welsh
so
was
many
that.
things are like
There was an idea called the Welsh knot. The Welsh knot. In schools, if you spoke Welsh, this is going back. This is in the 20th century, early 20th century. If you spoke Welsh at all in school as a child, they would literally hang a board around your thing and get you to stand in the corner with Welsh knot written on it, because they did not want you speaking Welsh at all. So the language, there were pockets of there's areas of North Wales that are first language Welsh. Similarly, in West Wales, there are some pockets that are first language Welsh. South Wales, Southeast Wales, so around Cardiff, where the majority of the population of Wales is, Welsh was almost entirely lost. And it was only in the 1980s when the Welsh government basically went, this is not good. We're going to get everyone now. And so the number of people speaking Welsh has actually increased. It was a dying language. It was seen as a dying language. And even in kind of the areas where it was first language in North Wales, the amount were decreasing. And that then led to, you get aspects of violence. There was an organization that became quite violent in the 70s and 80s called My Being Glendower, which were the sons of Glendower, which was they basically were like the Welsh IRA and would blow up people's second homes. So if somebody kind of bought a nice little cottage in North Wales that was English, they burn it to the ground and stuff like that, because they didn't want the kind of houses being lost to the locals and the language being diluted.
My father-in-law. My father-in-law.
Sorry, Jamie. Just wanted to say it's a good example for how they managed to keep it alive or like re-survive it, because that's not the case for all of them. So please, your father-in-law.
My father-in-law did some work in North Wales and on farms and stuff when he was in his kind of early 20s, I think. And he'd learnt enough Welsh to be able to walk into the local pub and say, "It's all right, lads, don't worry," kind of thing. Just to be able to walk in as an Englishman and not come to harm, kind of thing. It's that enough Welsh to pass, kind of thing.
But it's crazy to think that it had to be like this, over some weird ideological whatever.
Historically, it was a suppression. It was a suppression. The Welsh by the English, which can date back to kind of Edward I, back in the 14th century, if I remember rightly. And it's just been going on for years. And luckily, the Welsh culture was strong, and there was still maintained the storytelling and the singing which is what kept the language alive beyond those little pockets.
But I think that's exactly that's for so many languages. Poetry, old poetry and old songs. That's how those languages survive. That's also so many of these other very small, tiny native languages all over the world. The only thing they have is some like tradition of old song, and that's the only way or only place where you find those languages still, because no one speaks it anymore.
Yeah.
Tom Jones has got a lot to answer for then, Andy.
And Max Boyce. The people will never have heard of. Max Boyce was a Welsh poet and songwriter who was kind of very strong in the kind of sort of 70s and 80s, associated particularly with the rugby. It's interesting actually how Welsh rugby is a very important thing in Wales, and how there was a massive correlation connection. There's an event in Wales called the Eisteddfod, which is a kind of a coming together and celebrating song and poetry, and you literally have this. You have little events all over, but there's a national Eisteddfod with thousands of people now come together, and it's all in Welsh, and they celebrate the Welsh language and the Welsh culture, and poetry and song. And Wales is sometimes known as the land of the song, and that kind of spread into kind of rugby. So when kind of you get like a rugby match in the sort of 60s and 70s, you'd get the kind of the supporters would join together, and it still happens now, but it really kind of kicked off in the 60s and 70s and into the 80s. They would celebrate and encourage through song, and some of that would actually be in English, but some of it would also be in Welsh. And so that actually kind of kept the kind of the language and the culture alive, even where other areas it was being suppressed and not being taught in schools, for example. It's fascinating stuff. But you wanted to change the topic. Yeah.
I first of all wanted to ask if I can get up and get myself some more water before I die of coughing. I mentioned before I'm having a cough now. It started. I'm working on it, breathing deeply. But yeah, I wanted to ask what you guys have been up to the past weeks, like maker-wise. What's your latest? What are you working on? What's happening in your lives in these depressing, dark times? You know, what keeps you motivated? You know, in a way that you're like.
Once we're an hour in, this is probably our kind of attention grabber as well. At the end of the main sort of part of the show, before the after show, we sort of talk about our attention grabbers. So that's probably a good thing to sort of talk about attention grabbers, and then we can swap over into the after show for the Patreons. So Jamie, do you want to go first with kind of your attention grabber and what's?
Yeah, I mean, well, my kind of maker stuff in the last kind of couple of weeks has just been a little bit of prep and trying to sort things out. I took advantage of a sneaky Black Friday deal, so I've got a new toy on order of a new 3D printer. So this weekend I've been trying to kind of sort all of the stuff that's off camera and try and make space and all that kind of prep for more making type stuff, because hopefully that should actually inspire me to get back into doing a bit more of that. That's my kind of plan. So a little bit of like pottering.
Would this be a high-speed multicolor printer?
Maybe. But yeah, so I've been doing a little bits of tidying up and stuff, and bits of sorting out little rolling carts and things for stuff, and organising paperwork and all that kind of bits. But also for long-time listeners that have had to put up with my servers and stuff whirring away in the background, I'm also trying to fix that problem as well. So a little bit of like tech nerdery, kind of making new digital stuff in my house. That's been kind of it's been my kind of, I was going to say focus then, but I'm not allowed to use that one, am I? It's my attention grabber.
Good winter activity, you know. You don't need
absolutely
to do those things.
Yeah, putting hygrometers everywhere to see what's what's a safe place to put some technology and things.
I could never. This is a mold paradise. I'm fighting against my humidity in the apartment every day, ventilating and heating and trying to fight off the winter.
I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but I put one of these that was empty about 3 weeks, no, maybe a month ago, and that is a significant amount of water. That
is that with this salt block, or what is it?
Yeah, so it's a salt block in the top, right. And that's pulled a good kind of half a litre or something out of the air in here.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? You kind of we produce moisture just by breathing and add cooking and drying clothes, and we want to kind of keep windows closed at this time of year because it's so cold outside, and trying to sort of balance heating off. Yeah, it's tricky.
Just before the show, I put up some laundry, and I just know I have to ventilate the hell out of this place afterwards, because otherwise when I wake up tomorrow, the windows are going to be completely wet. It's horrible.
Yeah, we get condensation.
If I had a balcony, I would put my clothes outside, even in winter, but I can't, and it's the worst.
Yeah.
Maybe I need one of those things, Jamie.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I left it in here just as a kind of a test, and I'm quite shocked at just how much moisture it's pulled out of the air.
There's been a lot of things in the sort of media in the past sort of year or so, because the cost of living, the cost of electricity going up, and gas and things like that, and people talking about how difficult it is to kind of heat your home and dry your washing and stuff like that. And over the kind of course of the past year or so, I've seen some variation in kind of sort of things. People talking about I'm not using a tumble dryer anymore because it's so expensive to run, and then people talking about having, if you have just an era, and then you just let things dry with the heat of the room, it's slow, and you put a lot of moisture into the air, and then you can get heated areas. They're quicker, and they're not expensive to run. It's not as expensive to run as a tumble dryer. Maybe not quite so quick. But recently I've seen several articles talking about having dehumidifiers and using those, and just having a normal air, but then running a dehumidifier. Again, much lower energy use than a tumble dryer, but takes the moisture out of the air. So actually then the washing is drying quicker. And for a fraction of the price even of running a heated air, and without the damp issues. So maybe look for a cheap dehumidifier.
Yeah. There are even like these fancy ones, from Dyson, that also filter the air from pollen and dust and whatever stuff. I've only heard about those things, like these air purifiers that are like just taking through the air and taking out all the particles that could be like harmful for people with allergies. I don't know. I have never tested them. I don't know if they're actually great or if someone has experience with this, but yeah. A friend of mine actually just recently bought a humidifier because her apartment apparently is too dry, and putting wet towels on the heater is not doing it. So she actually bought a humidifier, and I was like, "Are you serious? Can we please switch our problems? Because like, how is this an issue?"
How far away is she? Is she far away too far that you can't put like a big long tube?
She actually, like for Hamburg dimensions, she's quite close. But no, I could not put a tube, connect our windows and be like, you breathe my air, I get yours. Fine. I wish.
Just equalize between the two.
Right.
Two tubes.
I mean,
each with a fan facing a different direction.
I mean, I'm managing fine with just like after cooking or after opening the dishwasher, after making a tea, just opening the window for a few seconds to get the majority out, and then afterwards heating again, trying to keep the temperature and humidity levels at the perfect sweet spot. But yeah, it's a hassle. I don't know. And also now that it's like minus outside, I don't feel comfortable opening the windows, but obviously I have to. Yeah. And then you can't let
sometimes
them
you're just
open
bringing
like,
humidity in.
yeah. I mean, outside it's still drier than here, but yeah. If you open it too long and your apartment gets too cold, then it's also not good, because then if the walls get cold, if you leave the window open, or if, I don't know, you have to reheat it then, right? So you have to find also the perfect time span of ventilating without getting it too cold, and then yeah, just don't feel like this in the morning. Also, then it's dark outside and you open the window, so I first switch off all the lights.
Yep.
Because you have the mosquitoes in the evening and then weird people watching me. So I have to switch off all the lights and then ventilate my apartment in the dark, feeling like a complete idiot, like walking slowly from room to room in the complete darkness just to get fresh air. Yeah.
I love the fact that that's the order of problem, though, is that it's the mosquitoes are the bigger problem than the weird people looking through the window.
Right.
I think that's a good way round.
Right. And still I managed to get mosquitoes. The weird people I haven't seen so much, luckily. So let's hope that the mosquitoes remain the only problem.
Yeah, I hate mosquitoes.
It's the moths
Really
that I
do.
hate, because I don't tend to
Yeah.
get bitten by mosquitoes, but moths seem to just like, I don't know whether it's they like the beard or something, but I used to, where I used to live years ago, it was right by a train track, and you'd get really, really huge moths, probably with a wingspan of maybe 70 or 80 centimeters, massive things.
70
Not
or 80
70,
centimeters.
I went 70 or 80 millimeters, because I'm thinking
Right.
engineering. 7 or 8 centimeters. But I'd be, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning working on an IT problem with the window open to try and stay cool in the summer, and then this moth thing that's the size of a bird just like hit me on the side of the face. Yeah, it's just horrible experiences of being like completely in the zone, and then something in a
those are
sealed
just
room.
shy butterflies. Those are just shy butterflies. You have to like them.
Yeah.
Come on. They're like
They're
the
fine when they're not
Batmans
moving.
of the.
It's when they fly at my face that I have a problem.
True.
I don't mind moths
But
so
first,
much.
I first thought you mean those tiny moths, that go into your food. Because once you have those, it takes a long time to get rid of them, and they can come in any package of oats or in any package of whatever grains you buy, and then you have an infestation. That's a problem. Those I would have an issue with. The ones that come in at night, okay, you can get rid of them. At least they don't try to nest in your food. But
Good point.
So, Peter, what making things have you been doing lately, Peter? Or what's been grabbing your attention, if not making?
I mean, lately, luckily, this year has been a year full of maker meetings in all shapes and forms. It started with Maker Central, then I went to Oslo and met Rasmus and Richard, and then then we had the Maker Camp, and then we had Maker Fair in Hannover, and then I went to Oslo for the Skapa Festival. So it has been one thing after the other, which is great. And since Leo and I live in the same city, we've been hanging out quite a lot.
Yeah.
So that's great. And Roxy as well. And otherwise, since I moved to Hamburg, most of my attention is working, because back in Leipzig I had the luxury of not having to work full time. I was a student. I paid basically no rent, and the rent in Hamburg is quite the difference. So yeah, it's mostly work right now, but small things here and there I enjoy, especially in winter. I enjoy knitting and crochet and sewing and all those things that you have to do inside anyways. And handling wool is not nice in the summer, so it's a good winter activity. And other than that, just like small things, like helping to build a shelf here or building a small thing there, and like whatever I can squeeze into those 3 hours of free time between coming home from work, having to eat, and then having to sleep again before going to work. It's like, it's ridiculous, this life as an adult. But yeah, you know how it is.
It's a trap. Don't do it, people.
Right.
Yeah. adulting it sucks. Yeah, don't do it.
Yep.
Right.
What about you, Andy? What's been grabbing your attention?
I have been collecting clock repairing tools and books. I've got a couple of clocks because I want to try and learn how to repair clocks. So I've had a few things arrive this week, which has been good. Been slowly dismantling some furniture in one of the bedrooms that I built probably about 10 years ago. Because the room needs kind of redecorating and making
dismantling with a view to putting it back together, or dismantling?
No, for kind of basically turn a child's room into an adult's room. Because got grown-up children now. So trying to make it so it looks actually something that it's nicer for an adult. Rather than a high level bed with a desk underneath. So that's been challenging. It's been going on for a little while now. There's quite a lot more to go because I can only do small bits at a time. So that's been my making side of things lately. Didn't get to Medshed this week because I've got my youngest has got a bad leg, so has to be looked after. So she'll hopefully, though, because of that, they won't be getting the bus to school next week. So I'll be taking them. So I'll probably get into the shed and do some bits and try and catch up with some organisation and tidying that hasn't been done because I wasn't there. So
when picking everyone else's cock-ups.
I didn't say that. Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to in a nice way stalk you and find out more about the stuff you do? Where can they find you and look at stuff you've done?
Friendly stalking is always possible on Instagram, obviously, as Pempu Making. I don't know if people can see what's written under my video, but that's basically it. That's the channel.
The audio listeners won't be able to see it. But,
So then
they'll see the title. So they'll see the title.
Okay, great.
Same as the title of the show. We'll have your Pempu Making in it.
I mean, anything else? I mean, on YouTube, the thing is, I think the last time I uploaded something on YouTube is 3 years ago. At some point during the beginning of the pandemic, when I still had so much time, and so especially, I mean, you guys know it. Doing something already is time consuming, but then documenting it and then editing it and then putting it somewhere, it's a whole different story. So I was still hoping that at some point I can pick that up again. And I have so many ideas and there's so many projects lying dormant. But when, how? But other than that, on YouTube at least you can find old stuff. And then other than that, it's Instagram. But let's see. Working on it.
I'm definitely enjoying the adventures in the stories and things.
This year has been quite adventurous. I think I've never traveled so much. This year, I think I've been in 5 different countries in like a few months, which is crazy. But
it's wonderful to experience vicariously.
I think you're the most traveled person that I know of that I've met that isn't kind of one of those sort of super famous folks that kind of...
Maybe I am super famous and I'm just having a double identity and I'm like some kind of weird German
I was thinking people like Adam Savage, he kind of is, and the like, who kind of fly all over the place and that. But
I mean, those are other dimensions though, and he probably gets paid for it, I have to pay for it myself.
It's not fair, is it? How the people who can afford to travel can afford to travel the easiest.
Good thing is though Europe is small and Hamburg feels like it's far away from everything, but at least to the northern countries I'm quite close, so it did work out quite well. But if Europe was only like a little bit bigger, count me out. I'm not getting far. I just have this one radius of countries that I'm going to, and that's it.
Well, I think
entirely
because
fair.
you're in northern Germany, that's quite a good location in terms of being able to travel to various parts of Europe.
You would think that like Hamburg being a big city and having an airport and being still in a middle European country is close to stuff, but no, it feels you're super far away. I think it would, if you are maybe in Frankfurt or Munich or somewhere in the south, you're, I feel like you're much closer to stuff. I feel in Hamburg sometimes like on a remote island. I don't know why, but
there's a
it
lot
feels
of
far away
Germany
from
in
everything.
between you
Yeah,
and everywhere south.
especially like even my own mother is further away than you guys are from me, you know? Or like when I was traveling to, I was having this joke with Rasmus, like I saw him like 5 times in 4 months or something, you know? And I've seen my mother 3 years ago. And she's in the same country, you know? Like
I think
Germany
I've
is,
seen.
yeah.
I think I've seen Rasmus more times than I've seen my dad this year.
Right? See? What is with this guy? Rasmus is everywhere. Right. So, yeah. So, Hamburg is far away. My father did visit me a few weeks ago and he came by car from the south, which is like 900 kilometers. And he drove by car to visit me for a long weekend. And I should have just bought him like a train ticket because even if the German trains are not like reliable, at least they're faster and cheaper than doing this by car. But he insisted, and it's a crazy journey. No, I
it's a long
can't
day.
recommend. Yeah.
Maybe on the autobahn, yeah, foot down, yeah, it's 4.5 hours, isn't it? Yeah.
Ah, I wish you forgot. Like the was it 25 you mentioned?
M25, yeah.
Yeah, so German Autobahn, there are some nice little parts. But even if you have like the fastest Porsche and you can drive like 300 something in these little parts, the rest of the Autobahn is like a continuous line of construction work and detours here and there and like it's not a nice journey, no. You're standing more than you're driving sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely the M25.
Yeah.
I think it sounds a lot like the M6.
Yeah, it doesn't have any nice bits.
I'm a huge supporter of public transport, and so far, even with the slight hiccups of strikes or something being on the tracks or something not working or a bridge or a tunnel having issues, still it's the most reliable or like the fastest way to get from A to B. In Hamburg as well, taking the train from my home to work is like 30 minutes and taking the car at the same time during rush hour would be like over an hour sometimes. So
yeah,
it's not worth it.
I used to commute a few times. I've commuted to work by train, and I quite liked it to a certain extent. I wouldn't want to do the kind of the London commute. Yeah, that's not nice. But yeah, kind of just grabbing a train, like you say. I used to live in Bournemouth, right down on the south coast, and to get from one side of Bournemouth to the other, it was cheaper and well, not necessarily cheaper, but it was certainly easier to just jump on the train. I was 5-minute walk from the station. My job was 5-minute walk from the station at the other end, so it was just so much easier than trying to drive through a seaside town.
Yeah,
but it definitely depends. I mean, I can't speak for all the cities, and if you live in the countryside and you have to commute to a big city, sometimes you have only 2 buses a day. What will you do then, right? And if it doesn't fit your work schedule, then you need a car, definitely. So I'm not trying to say that like public transport works all the time. There are like cases where you can like not do it, but especially in big cities, usually especially if you have the tube or something, some like really fast means of transport, then that's always a good option. But yeah.
Let's close up here for the main show, and we'll dive over to the after show for patrons. So we will say goodbye to folks. We will see you next week, and yeah, that's it. If you want to hear the rest of the show, then you'll need to sign up on Patreon.com/MakersWaffle. I had a week off. I've forgotten how to do it. Bye, folks.
You folks know where stuff is.
Yeah. So bye.
Bye.